Okay, so good morning, everyone. Yes, I think the sessions today we're going to be talking a bit about ECM solutions or enterprise content management systems. We're also going to be introducing Content Aviator, but I think before we get there, a little bit about Vorna. Okay, so on my agenda, you'll see I've got the introduction to Vorna.tech, a little bit about enterprise content management, OpenText Content Aviator. I have got a video demonstration that I will talk you through, and then I will hand over to Ben to talk on these cybersecurity aspects. Okay, so Vorna was founded in 2010, and it's part of the Vorna Group. We are level 1 BBB company. We are an OpenText reseller, platinum partner, and we are 2-time OpenText Africa Partner of the Year winners. We have held the title for 2 consecutive years, namely 2024, 2023. Okay, we currently employ more than 90 tertiary qualified and OpenText certified IT professionals, and we do a successful implementation of intern and staff learner programs through the MIXITA. Okay, so our core expertise are in the OpenText enterprise content management space. We do records management, information archiving, document imaging and capturing, business process management, document output management in electronic forms. We do integrations into e-signature solutions to our ECM and EIM solutions, and then also we handle cybersecurity on the ECM platform. Okay, and just for some reference, these are some of our client base. Just to give you insight into the areas that we work in, and some of and give you comfort in some of the areas that we work in. Okay, so I think for those of you that are new to ECM or enterprise content management, what is enterprise content management? So I've got a definition on the screen that says it's a comprehensive software solution that's designed to help organizations manage, store, utilize their business content efficiently. So essentially what it is it's a collaboration or a set of tools that caters for document management, records management, your workflow automation and collaboration within an organization. Some of the key benefits that we're looking at is document management and organization. So structuring your data so that, one, it meets your business requirements and easy to access the content when required. Okay. Together with that, what we then do is we overlay that information with records management. So specifically when talking to government sector, how do we bring records management in to manage your retention and disposition of those records? Okay. I think equally important, workflow automation. How do we streamline your businesses? Simple business routing processes. How do we bring that into your organization, and how do we effect change within your organization without actually losing context to those business processes? I think also critically important is integration into third-party systems. So with the OpenText ECM stack, we have connectors that actually integrate into your Office 365, your SAP, SuccessFactors, Salesforce, the Oracle e-business suite, just to name a few. This becomes critical because essentially what we're doing is storing data from an Microsoft 365 aspect, we're looking at integrations into things like SharePoint, integrations into your Office 365, and integration into your Microsoft Teams. Now, Teams is actually a very crucial one because a lot of business decisions actually get done over team sessions, and we want to harvest that information and retain that information within the organization. So through that integration, we can actually save that meeting, and that is then available to the business when required. Sorry. I think more importantly, from our architecture perspective in our ECM stack of products, is the flexible deployment. So we have the capability of deploying it on cloud, on premise, or even providing you with a hybrid solution. Okay, so some of the benefits that we get out of ECM when we deploy it into an organization is one, it's a time saver. So with the integration into your Office suite, we can actually then access that content that we need straight from our application, or save it directly into the ECM solution. Okay. Added to that, what we then can do is apply security to the content. So that way we ensure that only the person that requires access to that document will have access to the document. I think, and from that perspective, also you start enforcing compliance within your organization. So from a legal perspective, where government is concerned, and to an extent the private sector as well, when we start looking at records management, how do we ensure that the correct information is disposed of when it needs to be disposed? And how long do we keep that information within the organization? So those are critical factors when we design our ECM solutions. I think most importantly, is the huge cost saver to an organization. So in the old days, we used to have the paper-based documents, and that was stored in files in cabinets, either all over the organization or stored in registries. And sometimes to get that information or retrieve that information can be a very cumbersome exercise. Having everything stored on a centralized ECM repository makes it easy to navigate, and once you've got the required access rights, you can go to the information in the shortest possible time. As I alluded to earlier, collaboration. I think collaboration is one of the key drivers around ECM. So being able to access the document when you need it, being able to interact with people on compiling those documents. So one, from a storage perspective, the documents become available to the organization, but at the same time, with our integrations into the Office 365 environment, we can collaborate on the documents in real time together, and all of that information is actually stored in the ECM solution. Okay, and that way we always ensure that the latest version of that document is always available. Okay, so these are some statistics that was released during the course of last year by Gartner and McKinsey. And what it's actually saying is that 47% of people actually 47% of people within organizations struggle to find information for them to effectively do their jobs. Another scary fact is that employees spend up to 20% of their day just looking for information. And even scarier is that employees work on up to 11 applications to access the content that they require. Now, yes, the old days of paper-based systems, that was a scary enough exercise because you had to get the right requisitions in triplicate and then get the required approvals, and before you could get a document out of registry. And if that wasn't painful enough, it was then requesting documents that might be sitting external registries and so forth. And then the third issue is if you could find those documents. So that was the old manual days. Okay, with the advent of ECM solutions, everything is now stored electronically in a central repository. Now, the problem with this is over time, and information has grown so much. It's scary the rate at which information grows on an annual basis. Now, it can be really cumbersome to actually try and find information. And there can be several factors that can lead to that. One, your organization has grown so big that you haven't maintained the information from a records management perspective. Two, the information is misfiled on the system, or it's classified incorrectly. So those are typical elements that would lead to those scenarios. In terms of users having to work up to 11 different applications to get the information, I think in recent years, and especially on the OpenText stack, this is where we've seen a boom, in that we now have the connectors to link directly into your applications. To give you an example, looking at SAP, a user can now log into SAP, and through the one screen where they're actually looking at the transactional data, they then have a link where they can actually open and retrieve all the unstructured data that's sitting in the ECM system, but doing all of this from one interface from within SAP. Okay, so those are critical factors that we need to be cognizant of. Okay, so OpenText looked at the scenarios a few years ago, and they started asking the question, how can we improve and retrieve that information with minimal effect, okay? And it was around this time that we saw the introduction of your AI toolset. So OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini. And then OpenText were at a decision point, if I can put it that way, where they had to consider looking at changing the way that we do searching within the ECM solutions, or embracing the new technologies that have started to emerge. And they've actually went with the latter, where they started taking these AI engines and then actually embedding it within the ECM platform. And this is something that we're going to talk through in the next few slides. So the Content Aviator now becomes a middleware that talks to your ECM, but also on the top end talks to your AI engines. And this is where we actually start extracting the data. Okay, so a definition that OpenText like to use is that Content Aviator is an AI-powered assistant designed to help users interact and manage enterprise content more efficiently. In a nutshell, what that does is it simplifies the way you search for data, you summarize data, extract data, you translate data. So in scenarios where you're working as in multinational companies spanning several continents, and information is captured in different languages, from German to English to French, how do you find the information that you're looking for? And the demo that I have after this talks exactly through that. But essentially, I think what, if you think back to the previous slide with the statistics that I showed, 47% of information cannot be found, or 20% of the employees' days spent looking for documents. You now have a mechanism where you can extract the information that you require with minimal effort. So rather than actually searching for the document, going through searches, downloading the document, reading through the documents to see if you can find that information, the question is, why can't we just ask the system to find that information for us? Okay, so essentially what you're doing is you're reducing all of that manual effort, and you're actually freeing up your employees to focus on all the other work, and reduce the effort that's required from a search perspective. Okay, so critical areas that Content Aviator brings. So one, you're looking at conversational search, where users can actually ask questions using natural language. Okay, and when we retrieve that information, we want to summarize that information. We don't want to read through that document. I mean, that document could be 1,000 pages, it could be 100 pages. All of that is time consuming. We need a simple method to extract that information and ensure the information we require is at our fingertips. Okay, again, coming back to my previous examples where we work over multiple continents and the documents are in different languages, we need the ability to translate that document on the fly, extract the required information, generate responses, and then translate that back into the original language. Okay, so these are key elements. And what you're seeing now is that over and above what the standard enterprise content management brought you from a search capabilities, we're now adding several levels above that. Okay, I think critical to this whole implementation is that when we do these searches and the text extractions, we need to ensure that the entire process is secure and fully integrated. Okay, and also we need to ensure that all of that information remains protected. Okay, so some of the huge benefits. Time. Okay, going back to 2 slides back where I presented the statistics. Through this process, you now find that the user has more productive time to do other work. Okay, it gives them the ability to focus on matters that are more important to the organization, and then also start enhancing collaboration within the workspace. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to improve efficiencies, making the employees' work lighter, and rather than focusing on search, focus on other more important work. Okay, so I'm going to take you through this video. And actually, I'm going to talk you through it. And in this case, the scenario that I've got here is actually of an HR. It's an HR position that's been advertised, and a whole lot of CVs was retrieved by the organization, and all of those CVs were actually filed in a single workspace. So this whole exercise actually talks through how do we go through the content to find the one applicant that meets all of the job requirements, or the best applicant that meets the job requirements. Okay, so just bear with me. There might be a second or two delay. Okay, so as a new HR person coming in and being given all of this data, the first thing that the HR manager will want to do is get oversight into what is this job all about. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to actually ask the system to give them a summary of the job description. Okay, so now that I've got a summary and I've understood what this job description is all about, I can now ask the system to give me a list of all the candidates that have actually applied for this job. Okay, so now that I've got this information, I can ask the system to tell me who are the top 3 candidates for this job. Okay, and once I've retrieved all of this information, I can then go and ask the system to give me a comparative analysis of the candidates based on their skills and their certificates, or their certifications rather. Okay, so once I've got all of this information, right, I can now ask the system who has the best certificate or who has the best references. And once I've got that information, I can then ask the system to provide me a link to that document, or alternatively tell me where the document is so that I can go and retrieve it myself. Okay, so once I've got the reference, I can go to the document and I can open the document, and I can also then start analyzing the document using Content AI. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to see when you open the document is that this document that we received is actually in German. Okay, so using the natural language, okay, we can start asking the system questions on the document, starting with generating a summary of the document. And as you see there, the summary is generated in the language that we've actually asked the system. Okay. In this instance, also what it will do then, you can actually query this document to the nth degree. Simple thing like, is this a good reference? What it will actually do in the back end is use the AI algorithms to analyze those documents against other reference letters as well. Okay, so we've extracted the information of this applicant, and we like what we see. What we now want to do is invite that applicant in for an interview. Okay, so we can actually ask the system to start to help us generate an email asking him to come in for an interview, and the system can do 2 things here. So one, it will help us generate the document. Because in this case, France's application was in German, all his documentation was in German, we can now ask the system to translate that email that he generated for us into German. And once we get that response, we can literally copy that information and then paste it in our email and send that off to France. Okay, and that's pretty much the demo. So, I mean, this is just one case in point that I've highlighted, but essentially this can be applied to any environment, from an insurance scenario to a business type scenario to an HR scenario. The system is flexible, and it will adapt based on the questions that's being asked. Okay, just want to get to the next slide. So just to give you a high-level overview in terms of how does all of this work. Okay, so in the back end, we're looking at the system doing a text extraction, okay, and taking that information and passing it in into a vector database that's sitting in the back end. From a user perspective, a user then poses a question through the Aviator user interface, and that question is then broken down, and then a couple of things are done with it. One is that information is then used to query the vector database. If a match is found, it is then sent to the AI engine, to the large language models, where it's then translated back into a response. But before that response is presented back to the initiator, there's a permission check that's done. So you as the user will only see content or see responses to contents that you have access to see on the system. Okay, so that ensures that any sensitive information remains private. Okay, so key points that we need to touch on. So the vector database is located in your private cloud or private cloud tenants. Your business data is never used to train large language models, and the responses are exclusively generated from documents that users possess the requisite permissions. So, like I said earlier, you will not get information out of documents that you do not have access to see. Okay. Okay, and I think this is an important question. So how does OpenText Content Aviator handle version updates? So from a system perspective, the vector database only holds index information on the current version of your document. If that document is updated, the vector database actually drops that index information and then re-indexes the document so that it always has the most current information available. Okay, so earlier on in my video, I actually showed you the translation from English to German and German back to English. Okay. So the screen that you're looking at now, this is all the languages that are currently supported, okay? Some good news for South Africans. We have 4 languages over and above English that's also supported. So Afrikaans, Sotho, Xhosa, Zulu is also supported in the system in its current form. Okay, I think a high-level roadmap. So Content Aviator has been available since the first quarter in 2024, and that's been available on the OpenText ECM cloud platforms. Okay, as of the fourth quarter of 2024, Content Aviator has been available on to the on-prem versions of the ECM tools, but also remember that your AI engine actually sits in the cloud. So in this instance, it's actually a hybrid model that's being used, okay? All the while ensuring that the content, your content is kept secure. Okay, so the future, where we like to see Content Aviator going. So ultimately what we would like to see is audio files, video files, summarization, where the AI actually goes through the media files and actually extracts key information. So it generates transcripts, and out of that transcripts, it generates the key information, which then makes it accessible from a search perspective. Also, we start some of the key elements that we're looking at is metadata translation that may exist on the data. So currently, the ECM platforms from OpenText support multiple languages, and those languages can be in multiple, and that metadata attributes can be stored in multiple languages. So ultimately, we would like to see all of that embedded in Content Aviator as well. Okay, and then also we're looking at chat boxes as well, where we want to start interrogating all of those transcripts. Okay, so in summary, so Content Aviator eliminates the process of manually sifting through large volumes of information. It reduces the human-intensive efforts to understand the content. It boosts user productivity and efficiencies and promotes the reuse of existing knowledge. But more importantly, it ensures that your data is kept secure.